it is quite likely, nothing is certain in economics, but it is really quite likely that the US will cease to be the world's largest economy on any measure, i.e. the PPP or conventional market prices, by not later than the 2020s. Could well be before that. The replacement will, of course, be China, unless it blows up. But I have a basic, fairly simple view of what's going on here. China's population is going to peak at about 5 times America's. It will then shrink relative to the US very slowly. So the US may actually reverse all this in the 22nd and 23rd century, when the US has a population of 800 or 900 million and China has a population of 800 or 900 million. The Chinese have basically worked out, though not efficiently and not perfectly, with enormous problems, how to industrialize, which is the basis of economic development for the last 200 years. And unless you think the Chinese are 5 times as incompetent as the US, and I don't, it is plausible that their GDP per head, which is just their productivity, will converge enough on the US level without catching up. I don't believe it's at all likely that they will catch up for reasons I don't think I can go into. That their income, that their aggregate GDP will be larger than the US. In fact, there's a very simple calculation you can make, which is this. If the Chinese manage to achieve an income per head, which is an output per head, half that of the US or Europe, they will be as big as the US and Europe together in GDP terms. And to believe that the Chinese are incapable of managing to get to half our level is, I think, extraordinarily foolish. So unless there's some extraordinary catastrophe, it seems to me overwhelmingly probable that China will emerge as the world's largest economy. It will also, and in fact it's already very close to being, the world's largest market. Just behind the US as an importer, largely because the US runs a large trade deficit, China doesn't, but it's already the largest exporter in the world in gross terms. China is a resource-poor, big country. Resource-poor countries have to trade a lot to achieve a given level of income per head. And China's trade is extremely high relative to its GDP. It's, in fact, interestingly, it's about 3 times as high as the US trade relative to its GDP. Now, even if you assume that China will become less open than it has been, and it is extraordinary, largely, of course, because of the role of the processing trade and also because of its dependence on imports of raw materials, you have to assume that it's not going to converge on US levels of openness. And since it's not going to converge on US levels of openness and it's going to have a larger economy, it's going to have a larger market. So China will increasingly determine the world's pattern of trading relations. I think we have to assume that will happen, and it will become decisive in determining how the trading system works over the next 20, 30 years.